stay out of that place, although very good food.
Okay, so we are recording in the midst of bakery conversation, and Jean, you are well aware of the bakery as well, I know, because you live in that area too. And Pam, where do you live? I don't remember.
Hold on a minute. There we go. I had to accept I live in West Asheville. It's actually East West Asheville.
Okay.
So just up Haywood Road, after you cross the river. Okay, coming from downtown.
Yes.
With downtown
yes,
at your back, and you're going across the little bridge that's Haywood Road.
Yeah.
Past the River Arts District.
Yeah.
And then we're just up the hill.
Okay. Okay. Kind of near my cat clinic.
Oh yeah, I'm just right around the corner from your cat clinic.
Clack clinic. I'm up on the hill, Pamela, behind what is it, Home Depot or Lowe's there? If you head further out on Patton.
Oh, well, you're way out. You're way out on Smoky Park.
Yeah, you're on Smoky Park.
Kind of, yeah. It's where Patton turns into Smoky Park, and then we're up in the hills.
Yeah, it's where I have to go today, in fact.
West Asheville.
I have to hit Lowe's again.
I do too. I'm going to a different one. But anyway, we digress.
Yes,
so,
we do.
Welcome. This is your last class, ladies.
I know.
So I'm going to be expecting who's a great drawer? Some famous drawing person.
Oh, you mean like Da Vinci?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Da Vinci's good enough. Good enough. Is there a woman great drawer that people would recognize the name?
Who? It's just that history has paid so much attention to the men.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. I mean, drawing as underpainting to
Georgia O'Keeffe.
paintings. Georgia's a great drawer.
Georgia's good.
Frida Kahlo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to expect, here's even better. I'm going to expect a Terry Lynn level quality of drawing by the end of the class today. Okay, so that is the challenge.
Okay, Pam,
got it.
Hey, Pam, I got to go. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Pam.
Always, just have fun and do your best. All right, ladies. Any
No
questions?
pressure, no.
pressure.
This is
Really
for
no
fun.
pressure.
This is for your just for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
All right. So
I have a question. I need to move around a little bit. I still need to would it be easier for you guys if I turned off my video? Or am I a distraction? That's what I want to know.
I think it might be more important to turn the audio off if you get up to move around.
Okay, I know I'm very quiet.
Right, and because if you're I'll know if you're in front of, if I turn around to say something, I'll know if you're right at the screen or not. But yeah,
all right.
I mean, what do you think, Pam? I think that's fine.
I think it's up to you guys. It wouldn't be distracting to me as a teacher.
Right, you have pants on, Pamela.
Yeah, I do. I ran upstairs and put the pants on. I did it.
I have heard about horrific Zoom meetings that
yes. So far we have been
that was Jeffrey Toobin who just had his shorts on. He works for the New Yorker. He's a writer.
Oh.
And he was in a meeting and he got up and he had this fancy shirt, a tie, and his shorts.
No, there was more to it than that, Pam.
Okay. What was
okay.
No, we're not going there.
Oh, okay.
Well,
It's the reason he got suspended from CNN for quite a while.
Okay. Well,
I'm vaguely remembering.
We've been spared from that on all of the Zoom sessions for Purple Crayon. So we'll hope that this continues and that Pam keeps her pants on.
People are going to watch this video and go what are they talking about?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So if no questions for me, you know my deal. So I'll just be here, probably paying a little bit more attention to you today than I did last time because I don't think you have anything great going on over here. So have fun, ladies.
All right.
My goodness.
Any questions before we start? Oops, just thought of that spotlighted. because I'd like to do a quick little review. This is the last session of this class. I hope you all keep drawing. I've gotten some photos put up on the Padlet because I want to do a quick review today because there were a couple questions that came through, especially about perspective. My point about perspective is please don't get frustrated by it. I'm just giving you kind of a basic. So there's a lot more to it, but you need to understand just the basics so you can get a good like building or box or something into your drawing if you need to do that. So remember that any line that's parallel to another line, those lines converge on the same vanishing point on the horizon. Basically, that's it. And the other way and the other way. But I would just wanted to do a quick little review of some other things. I need to share my screen. I handed out, this was a handout, proportions and relationships. So try to keep these things in mind as you continue into the future and draw. And never hesitate to contact me if you have a question about something. I'm very conscientious with my email and I do a lot of online because I have to. I'm very uncomfortable promoting myself, but it's part of the business. So I have to do that. So I'm around a lot. You start with the basic still life, or this could be a house and a tree and a, I don't know, something. And you find usually anything that's your closest point, that's a unit of measure. And you can use that unit of measure to compare to anything else. And it helps give you a foundation to build your drawing around. So here's our first unit of measure. Can you see my mouse okay? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then so it goes step 1, 2, this is in chronological order. You use that unit of measure to compare to the height. So the whole composition from the top of the cone to the base of the cube is basically 4 units high. And it's about 4 units wide from the edge of that sphere to the edge of this cube. I also find out how high up the top of the sphere is. So and you can do little tick marks on your paper if you want at first, as you get used to using these concepts. So it's about 3 units up from there. And you can also see that the base of the sphere is about 1 unit up. So already you can start comparing and checking your proportions and here. So then we figure out this would be our point of view is coming directly into this perpendicular to the edge of the paper. So there's our point of view coming in. And here's our baseline. That's perpendicular to our point of view. Because this line is not always necessarily straight up and down. I do this as an illustration and it helps. Then from this perpendicular line to our point of view, what is the angle that this line goes off? So we kind of estimate that angle. And then we can estimate this other angle as well. And you can extend this a little bit if you want, because the next step is extending this out. And in this case, the horizon is off the paper.
Right.
Where is our horizon? Our horizon is actually going to be above this cone because we can see part of the top of this cone. And my next point is going to be defining exactly what that horizon level is. So any line, this line, and this line are actually, if you look straight down on the cube, in reality, they are parallel to each other. So those 3 lines and the hidden line below all need to go off to the same vanishing point on the horizon. And then you do the same thing, you would do the same thing on the other side. It's a different angle, but this one and this one and this one all go to the same vanishing point on the horizon, but off in the other direction. That way you have these lines, you can then draw in the cube because you see where it intersects. You estimate like how far, I didn't put this line in, I'm sorry. Here's our unit of measure. And if you, I did. The edge of the cube is about 2 units of measure out. So that line you just kind of draw straight up. because vertical is always vertical. And you see where the corner is because it intersects with that angle. It intersects with that angle. So that's how you figure out the box. Then with our relationships of each object within the still life or the drawing, you figure out where does the cone touch this cube? Because we've got a good solid cube in here. Where does it touch on this side? Where does it touch here? And where does the sphere touch here? And that's going to give us a good sense of where these other objects are in space, in placement, that three-dimensional, what's the word? Illustration, no, of a three-dimensional, my mind just went blank. We're doing a two-dimensional illustration of something in 3 dimensions. Nobody remembers that word. I always use it and it's just gone totally blank in my head. But we're creating the illusion, hello, of 3 dimensions in 2 dimensions. And then here's kind of our drawing. So you can see I've left some of my little thinking lines here and here. The horizon would be up higher. So that's that. That's just a quick review of that. Any questions on that before I move on? Remembering now in the perspective, again, keeping it simple, that the lines are at least parallel and slightly converging as they go off in the distance. And we had the birdhouse thing. I also put this on the Padlet site. The horizon line is always at your eye level. So if you're standing taller, it's higher. If you're going down lower, it's going to be lower. So wherever you are, that's your horizon. You have to figure that out. Are you looking down on something? Are you looking up at something? Some cases, if you're doing a building and you're standing beside it, you're going to look down on part of it and up on another part of it. So you would imagine that a cube like this, if you're standing, say, halfway at the middle of it, that's your horizon line, you're going to see what we've been drawing. If you're under it, right, these points are going to go down to this vanishing point, down to this vanishing point, down to this vanishing point. And if you're looking down on the cube, you can see that those lines go up. So the horizon line is always at your eye level and it moves up and down.
Hey,
And then
Terry,
yes, Pamela.
could we get that, a copy of that? That's really helpful to me.
Sure, I sent it in that, I think in the email I sent you.
Is it?
Oh, great, excuse me. But I will send it out to everyone. Sorry, I guess they've decided to mow the lawn next door.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I will send that out again, yes.
I
So then
remember
you could,
the birdhouse, but I don't remember.
yeah, I
this.
found this and I thought this was I just grabbed it really quickly, a nice little illustration of that it's at your eye level. So in comparison to the birdhouse, this solid line here would be the horizon line. And that's at your eye level.
Right.
So, okay. Any questions on that? Yes,
That's just very helpful. Thank you.
you're welcome. But please try not to get too uptight about it. This is for your benefit and it should help.
And Terry Lynn, I just checked that your last attachment, and I don't believe that that was on there. The birdhouses were, but, or the birdhouse was, but not that little person.
All right.
Yeah.
The one I said that because Pamela asked some questions. That's why I was, I'm writing it down so I don't forget. Let's go to this. Can you still hear that lawnmower? I can hear it through the other door. I can switch that if you want. Pamela, you don't mind if I share, do you? Thank you, please. Please, thank you. I think if you put it on Padlet, you're open for me to share.
Oh, it's fine.
Thanks. Pamela did some nice drawings. She did this house, and this is the nice thing about Padlet is I can take these pictures and maybe put some notes on them to help out a little bit more.
I
This
wish
is good
I had done that.
that you had done.
I wish I'd done that. That wasn't me.
Oh, Jean, this is you. I'm so sorry. It was Jean I sent it to. Oh my gosh. And it's right there on the, right there in my tablet. So sorry, that noise is distracting me. Jean, these are really
So
well
now
done.
then you've had 2 senior moments. You only get 3. 3 strikes and you're out.
Oh gosh. You know what? After teaching high school for 20 years, and I always thought it was senior moments or something, it's not. High school students who are young forget at least
I'm
as much as we do.
teasing you. I'm teasing.
I know you are. So
That's the
good.
other.
These seem to be
Jean.
going off to the Verizon line that's way off the board. This one got just a little wonk. I think you kind of lost where the horizon was out here, and that's okay.
It's the other.
So what
Jean, not me. Just to clarify.
oh, it's the other Gene. I get so confused.
Sorry.
So here, I took it down and I did some overdrawing on it to help her a little bit with some of these angles. Getting this, here's our unit of measure, here's the closest corner of that. Getting this angle was vital, and that's kind of one of the ones that she lost a little bit on that. Then drawing through behind this building, because you'll also have complex buildings like this. So from this corner, if there were an imaginary line between the corner of that eaves and the corner of the other eaves, that would go to that same vanishing point as this. And so by drawing that through, it also helps you with the yellow line, dissect that base square. That'll give you the center of it, which is not in the middle of this line down here, but it's the center of the square in perspective. And you draw a line straight up to give you the peak of that roof. Because that's the, then you can bring those eaves down to the sides. This also got a little off. This line has to go down. This one goes down to the horizon now. As you're looking down at this line, at the base of, say, this cube of this house, you would be looking up at this cube that's on that cupola that's on top. So that changes. So I exaggerated it a bit for her. She also did, she had a picture of her dog that she did. Where's her little drawing? Right here. And she was concerned about the legs a little bit here, didn't feel quite right to her. And all I did is I downloaded the drawing and I did some over sketching of the container shapes that we talked about. So what I did is I imagined a central bone probably going through that dog's leg in the middle of it. That will give me the angle of that bone. Drawing the cone, a truncated cone, cut off cone there. And then this part of the leg is more a cylinder, but it's going off at a different angle. So I did that central line to help me find that angle of this cone, cylinder. And the same here, find this kind of the center of it. It helps you lay in that cylinder, and then you would draw around it to create the shape of the leg. And a lot of people don't realize the knee is here, the heel is here. These are the toes. Some people start, that's really especially obvious on horses, really studying and looking at things. So I did that kind of helped, I hope. And it can help you. I will also send out again the link to the Padlet. Even if you don't want to use it, you can go there and see any of my notes for the future. Or if you want me to critique something. Oh, Jean, here's you. You got these before, right, Jean? Other Jean.
Yes, yes, I did.
Did these help?
It did help, yes. And I uploaded just one from this past week, but yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I missed
I just did it this morning.
Oh, okay. And I was setting up, I was busy setting up. I just got back a couple of days ago and I was setting up my audiovisual stuff. But I can see that Jean here was thinking through the shapes. Here she's got a nice sphere and it gives it a nice solid shape. So you can see my little notes here. This was tricky.
That one was
because
hard for me, yeah.
yeah, the photo is not really clear. And it's like this hidden angle here. And then there's a porch. This is a porch. So that was a little more complex than I had intended it to be. And the side that you see here is so slim and so tight, and it's hard for me to draw with these lines that I was drawing with. But it's very good. It's still very good. Very well done. And this is the one you uploaded this morning.
Mhm.
Yes. So she's determined that a horizon line is here. And if you're not sure on that, you can take a ruler and hold it on your photograph, or a straight edge if you're doing something live, and hold it up against that someplace on the building and move it up and down until you find something that's kind of a straight line that matches up, and then you'll know where your horizon line is on that building. So by determining that, you can draw a line straight through. Then she had her closest corner, this angle that goes off, intersected, because in reality, the side of this are parallel, intersect on the same vanishing point on the horizon. And this angle off this way, you get that one. That'll give you the angle of this and the angle of the roof as well. And then you can see that the angle of the chimney is even faster because it's higher up. So it's going to become more dramatic as you go up. And then you would do the same thing with all the little windows, and it will drive you crazy.
Did.
But right, it's like so many windows. Okay, I'm done with the windows. But it's a good thing to know. And if you want to, you can actually practice through that. When I was early on in my career, I did detailed drawings with precise perspective, and it helps you to understand it. But if you're drawing for enjoyment, just get the basics down. That's the important thing. All right, any questions again?
Seemed like Jean's house though was pretty spot on, the one you just showed, yes?
It was.
Yeah.
Good
Good job, Jean.
I'm going to switch to my easel for a second. I don't, at my other studio, I have a really long straight edge. But if you're, like I said, you figure out where your horizon line is. I'm just going to randomly put one here for now. Can you see those lines okay, or is it too bright? I need to be darker. Okay. This is just a quick little review. So this is my horizon line, and I'm going to draw a house. So I'm going to start small. There's my corner. And normally I'm doing this because sometimes when we do a close-up, we don't see where the vanishing point is. So let's say this is my line of sight. This is a line perpendicular to it. I determine the angle that this is going off. And I can determine the angle that this side is going off. I'm going to do a straight line just so it's a little easier to see. All right, so that if I continue those on to the horizon line, will give me this vanishing point and this vanishing point. This is easier to do on my easel because it's larger. When I was doing it on the table in the last class, it's a little tricky. So now I know any line parallel to this line is going to the same vanishing point, and the same on this side. Then I'd use my unit of measure to determine how wide the side of this building is. I'm going to say it's 1 measure wide, and say this is about 2 measures. So I go 1, 2. So I have 2 sides of the building. And then if I'm going to put a roof on, which would be good, I need to dissect the side where the peak of the roof would be. So I've dissected, what I've done is this side of the house here, I have just simply dissected it. And this is in looking at it straight on, and I find that middle point. But as you see here, that central point is not at the middle of this line because this line is in perspective. But by dissecting it, we can find that midpoint, do a vertical line, and then determine kind of the height. Say the height of that second story is about the same as this height, right about there. By finding that height by measurement, now we can draw in the peak of the roof. right? So you can see it seems a little wonky, but that's correct because we've measured it and it's working very well. Now from this peak, the top, what's the top of the roof? That's the peak, I guess. The peak of the roof is going off, it's parallel to this line and this line at the front. So it's going to go to that vanishing point. And then this back edge of the roof is at the same angle as this one. It's not in perspective, it's just the edge of the roof. So there it is. You see how that fits in very well. Now say we had a tall square silo behind it. I'm going to do a square one. Right, I'm just drawing some lines here. The peak of this is going to go to that vanishing point, not the peak, but the top edge, because that top edge is parallel to these lines, parallel, not parallel, yes, parallel. So it goes to the same vanishing point, and then this one goes to this other vanishing point. So if you had something tall behind, like a giant chimney or something, you can see it becomes, this angle becomes more exaggerated the higher up it goes. So hopefully by making this bigger, you can see about the vanishing points, and that can help. All right, I'm moving along because we have a lot to do and I'm excited. Any questions, please stop me. Oh, good. Any comments, anything? This is where we play the Jeopardy tune.
I was just thinking, Carrie, that if that's the only thing that people walk away with is a better idea of perspective, I think their drawings would completely be improved by,
The basis of that, the absolute basic is necessary because we do, if we're doing a landscape, we'd have to draw, often houses or something. All right, back to my main screen. Thank you. So if there's no further questions, today I want to introduce shading.
Yay.
Yay. Let me make sure I've got the right shaded shapes. This one. I want to do this one first. I think I'm going to share. Sorry, hold on a moment. I want to show you that, now I've lost you. These are from my first year, these are high school students. So by using the basic tools and information you've learned with the cylinders and the container shapes and the cubes and spheres and everything, and then learning these things on shading, these are first year students in the first semester. You can get things like this. Now they had little setups right in front of them instead of photographs they were working from, and with one single light source. A single light source really emphasizes the shadow. So if you want to set up something at home, my recommendation is to use white objects, if you can, and set up a really strong single light source, spotlight or the sun or something like that. But you can see by their understanding, it's almost all, they were all sharing this still light. There's the handle. So the handle is at different angles and creates different shadows for different people. So you have to decide what shape would you fit that handle into. To me, it would be like an egg shape, a long oblong shape, and determine at what angle it's kind of flattened with how it's coming at you. But by understanding a little bit about perspective, you can see that you can work that in. So those are just some examples to encourage you. These were, but not discourage you. So for instance, I'm going to walk through this first and explain it, and then I will do a demo. Here's a cube, for instance. We're looking down on the cube, so the horizon line is way up over here somewhere. This is shaded. So if the light source is coming from the side, which you can tell because this is the lightest spot on the cube, that's going to be the brightest spot. This one is getting oblique light. It's not quite as bright. And then this side is going to be kind of in shadow. Then instead of leaving it floating in space, it's really good to put it in some sort of a setting so you know where the cube is. This gets more complicated because we've got the cast shadow. We have a little bit complex shading of the curtain behind it. But I want to show you again the simplest forms, how to approach this so that you can eventually get to these spots. Here's a sphere. You have your highlight, your diffused light around here. And you can tell this almost points where the light is coming from. The light's coming from this direction. A diffused light. You have this area would be all in dark shadow away from the light, except some of this light is passing behind this sphere and bouncing back off the white surface to this. So this is some reflected light. And here's your cast shadow. So my terms in this are, and I'm going to give this to you, are highlight, core, this is your core shadow, C-O-R-E, that's on your object, your reflected light, and your shadow. With those 4 elements and keeping those in mind, you can shade anything well. Highlight, core, reflected light, shadow. And I'll say that over and over and over again. This person has done it a little more complex. I've been a little lazy and just grabbed other people's images off the internet. Here again, highlight, the core, the reflected light, and the cast shadow. They add shadow in here, but it's kind of diffused light. Then, depending on the direction your light is coming from, here we have the highlight this way, highlight this way, highlight this way. So highlight, core, you can see the reflected light here, it's a little lighter, and your cast shadow. Because the light in this situation is straight above the object, the cast shadow, if you look straight down on it, would be a circle. Now we have our circle, and as we did back in our perspective, when we did that, was that the second week we did that? We set that circle back in perspective. Remember how we put it inside a square and set it back in perspective? It takes on the illusion that it's an oval. In the second one, the highlight is coming from the light this direction, highlight. Here's your core. Here's some reflected light here. It's brighter than the reflected light over here. It's constantly changing. And there's your shadow, highlight, core, reflected light, and shadow. Now here it's dark because there's no light right under here to reflect back. And because it's coming at this angle, we can draw a line, almost like a vanishing point, but not, from the edge of the light that, why does it do that? Let me grab my mouse. The light would come down here, glance off from that and cast a shadow there. The light from your single source would come down here, and you can draw a line from that single source to the end of that shadow. So then you'll know how long that ellipse will be. And this one, because it's at the side, highlight, core, not much reflected light, and the shadow. Then as the light source casts like this, your shadow there is going to go way off the paper in the distance. We can apply these same concepts to a cylinder. Here's your brightest light, highlight, core, reflected light, and the shadow. This is doing it with hatch marks. And here's a cube. The light's coming from above, kind of this way. You've got a kind of a diffused area here, a core with some reflected light, and your shadow. Then the shadow, the light bounces off the corner of this. It will give you the corner of the shadow there. And as it comes down, it bounces off this corner and it will give you the shadow there. And I'll demonstrate that in a bit. Oh my goodness, jump right ahead. Here again, and this is with pencil now. As I said way back, I think first class, graphite pencils, you can get those dark ones that I got you, and you can get some nice dark grays, but you're never going to get a black. To get a black, you really need charcoal. But a lot of people starting out in drawing don't want to do the charcoal because it's a little bit messy. But I've got to the point I like to get my hands in things, so it's fun for me. Highlight, core, reflected light, the cast shadow here, and because there's no light to reflect there, you have that in the same cylinder. So these are just various illustrations of the same thing. This is done digitally, but they still use the same concepts. And then you can take even complex objects, but by breaking them down as we did from the beginning, this is basically a cylinder that's slightly angled in. This is kind of a cone. This is a cone as well. And here's a flattened sphere. So you can combine these forms through the container drawings that we did, right? Get your outline, and then you can start shading it. This is a painting. This is something I wanted to point out. Colored objects in black and white appear different. So that's why I really highly encourage to try to get white objects at first, because they're all the same. Because even though this is the highlight on this sphere, it's probably a mid-tone blue or red in reality. The highlight here is not going to be as bright as the highlight on a white object. So now you're going to start comparing different colors. That's why I also encourage, if you have something and you take a photo of it, turn it to black and white. It's going to simplify it for you until you get comfortable with that. Here is the light's coming from this direction. This one's back further in space. By darkening that, he sets it back further in space as well. Objects in space. We learned about perspective, how they go back linearly, but also that happens with tone and shading. As things are close to you, you have your highest contrast, your lightest lights and your darkest darks. As it goes off in a distance, that's going to come down a little bit. Your lights and your highlights are not going to be quite as light, and your shadows are not going to be quite as dark. So that's going to help set it back by having less contrast in the object. Just showing you some more examples. You can see the highlight, the core, the reflected light, and the cast shadow. Shadows also help you determine the time of day. You know, where is the light coming from? This seems to be coming from fairly high up in the sky. It's catching on that roof. It's catching highlights here. Now it's probably behind more, so you're getting the highlight, but it's also very dark on these sides of the buildings. So as the light's low, then the roof is going to be in shadow. So you want to try to visually determine that, the shading. So when we go into shading, tone, see, the same thing works for faces, sorry. Same thing, highlight, you know, and it brings down depending on the direction of the light. Now a face, you've got you can break that down into your basic forms as well, like a sphere, a cone, different abstract shapes that you can put a face into. When we're talking about shading an object, it is, that's your tone. Your tone has to do with how light or how dark something is, regardless of its color. So when you have a light tone, so tone is the overall. If you have a light tone, that's a tint. If you have a dark tone, that's a shade. Here's some great drawn examples, the light coming from this direction. Notice as the light comes down over that sphere, the cast shadow actually hits part of that cone. Now it follows and hits there, but now it needs to follow the shape of that curve of the cone. So this gets a little more complex. And the reflected light, there's some reflected light on this sphere, say from under this light spot here to here, but also right here, it's reflecting back from that cone. But then down here, it's in shadow, the cone's in shadow, so it doesn't reflect as much. I think you'll find yourself looking at paintings and drawings differently now, because you have a lot more understanding from this. Also notice how as the shadow gets further away from the objects, there's more ambient light bouncing around and it softens as it gets further from the object. It's the darkest right under the object, but a little lighter as it gets away. So bit by bit, don't start with anything too complex like this. Start with 1 or 2 shapes and then expand and combine them. Look how complex this is. This doesn't only have shading, this also has reflections. Try to stay away from, at the beginning, try to stay away from objects that have a lot of reflection, because you're getting into whole new territories with that as well. But again, by just looking and studying, that will help you in anything. Here are some objects. These are some of the objects I use normally for still lifes in life. And we can see how shiny that is. And now it's getting reflection from the window and the light's coming in low. So you have your highlight, your middle tones, kind of shadow, but it's also reflecting. But you can see it's reflecting green is diffused onto the side of that cube. See how complex it can get? Start simple, build on top of the concepts you're learning. So if you had something like this, turn it to black and white. Now watch what happens to this blue and this orange and this red. Which one's darker? If you were doing this from life, which one would you make darkest? Just kind of decide in your own mind, and then we'll see what it looks like when it's black and white. Right? So look how dark this blue is. The blue, and you can see the picture over here. The blue is almost shaded dark as this black cloth behind it. The orange is probably lighter than it would seem. If you look at this orange here and you look at it's almost the same tonal value as that paper that it's sitting on. So this is what when you're practicing at home, maybe take a picture of something, turn it to black and white and start from there. Any questions? How are we doing? Wow, that's a lot of talking on my part, but I wanted to be very clear on some of these, and I hope I was. Any questions? Nada. Okay.
I know
I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Scarlett, I know they're still with you. I'm just telling you because they're nodding and making expressions on their faces, even if they're not verbalizing. And Donna even has brought a friend to join her.
I see. Yes, he comes and joins us every now and then. That's good. All right. Demo time. Going to the easel. Let me see if I can do this demo well. Here's some, this is a drawing we've already worked with. I'll simplify this. Oh, good folding. There. Notice on my easel is basically black. I painted it black. It's almost time to repaint it. And I also always have a piece of white paper on my easel because that contrast, if my mind is constantly considering the comparison of all my colors and all my tones in finding that balance between black and white. Especially if I'm working in color like pastel or something. And normally I have a color wheel here too as well that helps me, that I have it in the color zone and I also have it in the grade zone. So this is where I wish people would talk a little bit. My voice starts to go down. All right. You could probably note this. I'm going to do a little demo and then I'm going to have you folks draw it as well. So right now, I just want to go through. When we're considering shading, should have done this ahead of time. Generally speaking, a lot of people, artists, consider there are about 10 value tones, 10 value. So I'm going to simplify it even more here. 2, 3. And most people refer to 1 as white and say 10 as black. So if you have black, that's still on my paper, okay. And you can see with a graphite pencil, you're just not really going to get a black. It's about as dark as I can get it. So from your darkest dark to your lightest light, it's a good idea to have about 10 steps. So the first, like from 1, 2 would be a very, very light tone. I kind of blend it in with my finger, make it soft. Then it gets darker. I'm just going to do a quick sketch of this. Middle tone. And darker. And I'll send you a little guide for this too. And then even darker down here. So sometime practice doing those. I can't believe I don't have that ready for you. Just kind of skimmed over that. So you can almost see there are 10 values from white to black. I wanted to quickly show with charcoal. Whoops, that needs to be white. Very light, a little deeper, more deep, deeper. And then you get something like, not that one, this one. So you can see that you get a little more accurate value tone. You can get really some nice darks when you're using charcoal instead. Trick with that is, gets on your fingers. A lot of people don't like that. I do. And it washes off. It washes off. So here are our value scale. Okay. Now, how do we apply this to an object? I'm not going to do the full still life right now. We would start with our sphere. And we'll say the light's coming from this direction. I always start light. Now, there is no, sometimes you see this, and I'm going to draw it in here, but there's no actual bubble like this on any object. It is just a transition. It's different than this one, so I'll move this. It's a transition from the whitest white to our values of 2, 3, 4 as we go down. So very gently, we would shade away from there. Now, the highlight and the core are going to follow the form of the object. So this is a sphere. So the core would be following that sphere. Remember when we did a sphere, we thought about how it comes out at us, how it comes around this way at us. And I'd mentioned this earlier. So we can start seeing how this side comes out, this side, it comes at us. So we're looking at it around this way and all these different ways. And by knowing that it's doing that, that'll give us the idea of where these shadows are gonna fall, the core on that. And I come out here, it blends slowly this way. So I do more pressure here to make it darker. I'm kind of laying the pencil a little bit on its side and taking advantage of the more of that graphite that's showing there. And slowly kind of, you can blend a little bit with your finger if you want. Again, this bubble was only to let you see the shape of that highlight, but never outline it. It looks very amateurish. Now the light's going to come down. See, the light source is way off that way. That's going to give us an idea of where the shadow is going to hit. Okay, because it's at an angle. Now, if this were a smaller piece of paper, I might turn it over because this curve would work better that way, but we discussed that way back. And this is my cast shadow. Just under here, it's going to be darkest. And then it's going to kind of get lighter as it goes away. Again, I put that circle in to kind of define the edge of my shadow, but you don't want an outline at the edge of the shadow. It diffuses slightly as it gets away from the object. This is going to be pretty dark because there's no place that it's reflecting right there, but it will reflect as the light bounces off here in the distance back onto here. And the same here to here, you're getting a little bit of that reflected light. So that's a little bit lighter right there on the edge of the sphere. Okay. Are you ladies practicing this as I go? A little bit? Okay, because I'll go a little slow if you want. I think I'll get the basic shapes in the next like 10 minutes. We can take a quick break and then we can practice it in still life. All right. And the more time you take and blend, the nicer it's going to look. If I did this with charcoal, there's charcoal pencils too, but I like the charcoal stick because you can lay it on its side. And if I were going to be shading this, I could follow that shape and then see, just lay that right down and it comes in so quickly and nice, and it blends very nicely as well. Normally in class, I'll start people out on a pencil. I move to charcoal. Charcoal is a nice segue into color with pastel, and then move on to, because all of these concepts can be applied to all your drawing and painting media. Nice thing about charcoal too, look, like I can highlight, I can pull out the highlight with my eraser after. See, because you can just whoop, and it pulls it out. It's kind of nice. Cube. I'm going to draw a quick cube. Try to make it decent. I'm imagining my vanishing point way over here. So this one's going to be quite an angle. And then this one, and that one. So there's my cube. Let's say this time the light is coming from here. We know that the top of that, if it's above it, is going to be quite bright. The shadow, the core, is going to be here on the side away from the light. It would appear a little darker as it gets closer to the lightest spot. And then there'd be a little bit of a reflected light. So we have our highlight, our core area. Gets a little lighter here because there's going to be some reflected light. This is going to be that blended area in between. And I don't talk about that. We have the highlight and the core, and then you've got this blended area in between, middle tone. And then we determine the light's coming here, chum. Light's coming and touching this corner, chum. Touching this corner, chum, down here. So that's going to give us an idea of the perspective of the shadow, where the shadow is sitting in space. Right here, comes out from there to there. And when you have actual objects in front of you, you will see these shapes better. But by understanding and applying your concepts of, let's go almost straight down, perspective and understanding of shading, you're going to be able to get that in there quite well. I mean, if the light were coming from here, then your shadow would be way out this way. It would be out over this way, but I'm not going to do that now. We'll keep it simple. Same with a cylinder. Just kind of doing this quickly. Light source. Sometimes even now today, I will, up in the corner of my paper where it might get covered up by a mat or the framing later, I'll put an arrow to remind myself, where's my light source? Try to keep it consistent throughout. I'm going to find my core. Some reflected light. Some blending. And my light's going to come down that edge, down this way. And because this light is curved and as that light passes over each point on this curve, then this also, the shadow will be curved. Whoops. You can almost see that my shadow there and my core are almost blending into each other. And that's okay to do, because they do that. If you squint your eyes down, you'll see that they do that.
So we,
And then a cone. Just only do a quick one. Let's have the light coming from this direction. I'll just keep kind of playing with that light. This direction. Comes here. The core, because it's a cone, it's going to follow the shape. Even the shading is going to follow that form of the cone. So it's going to take on a slightly conical shape. There's my core. Blends over to the highlight. A little reflected light in here. So there's your cone. Notice I decided the light was here. So then as the light source is way off over here, as that comes down, it'll skim off the peak of that cone. And that's where you find the edge of that shadow down there, the end of the shadow. Once you practice these shading concept, you can apply it again by starting as we did with our basic forms of the sphere, cone, cube, cylinder, and even applying this to animals or people or landscapes or trees, taking each individual tree. How are the shadows working? Where is the shading on this? You can put them in these and use these basic, simple concepts of shading and create a very realistic drawing from it.
You said it's easier to tell where to shade when the object's in front of you.
Well, each one you do is going to, yeah, I'm kind of inventing this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because it's hard for me to know where to put the shadow, but I think if I'm looking at something, I can see the shadow.
You can see the shadow. And then you will remember, oh, how do I figure out how far the shadow goes out? Oh, yes, I find the source of light and kind of draw an imaginary line there, and that would help.
Okay.
So what this is doing is I'm giving you a variety of ideas, different directions of light. And the ones that you work with. And some of that sheet I gave you of the black and white photographs, that can help. That's going to be good. We're going to try one of these next. One other little thing I wanted to point out. We had talked about now setting, these is just the basic shading, setting it in space. I'm trying to think of which one. Let's take the cube, for instance. So if the cube, try to ignore this, I apologize. The cube is sitting on a table. So whatever that table is behind there, what makes this look bright and creates the illusion of a line at the edge there, because there's no actual lines in reality. Edge of a cube, if you looked at it under a microscope, would actually be a slow curve around. There's no real line there. What creates that illusion is the fact that the object or the table behind it is going to be darker than the cube. And that'll help set it down in space. Remember that little photo I showed that had the curtain behind it? And if you do a curtain and there's folds in it, just remember that those folds are elongated cylinders. And you know how to shade a cylinder. But it's a little more complex because there's a lot of in and out with it. So you can see with that almost, it looks a little more realistic. Now it's sitting on a table, it's in space, it's not isolated and floating. All right. What I'd like to do next, take a quick little break. Is that good, Pam? Are you still there?
I'm still here.
I'm here. I am here.
And Pamela, I'm saying Pam for Pam Robbins and Pamela for Pam.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Pamela. I just assumed she meant me.
No, I did. You mean Pam? Pam, yes, I both of you. But
Okay.
so
We're
Pam,
both
we're gonna want to take a quick little break, ladies, and get a clean sheet of paper. And what I'm going to do next is we're going to practice a couple of these still lifes that we've. Oops, where are you? Already done. This one and maybe this one to practice these concepts.
Okay.
Right.
So what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What do you think, Carolyn?
Oh, 5, not 10. I don't need 10. Does anyone else need 10?
Okay, so it's about 11:05. So about 11:10, we'll see you back here.
Excellent.
And Carolyn, you get to take a break too if you want. I'm going to pause the recording.
Yeah. All right. Yay.
Okay, so you guys are being recorded once again.
Thank you.
And
Okay. I'm going to go back. I want to show you this, and I apologize, did not send this earlier, but I will send this to you after. This is one of my sheets on shading. It just gives you the basic ideas. Here's your highlight, core, reflected light, blended shading, I'm calling it here, and shadow. So highlight, core, reflected light, and shadow. And here's a nice little value scale from 1 being white to 10 being like pure black. And you can have that on hand. There is, no, I won't complex with that. This is the standard approach to it. And we talk about contrast of white and dark. It's called chiaroscuro. That's an fancy Italian term. Chiaroscuro is just contrast. It means, chiara means light and scuro meaning dark. So light and dark. But I will send that to you later. Just, it helps as a reminder that you can have a sheet for that. All right. I have, I don't know if Pam's there. If not, I will do this. Here we go. So we're starting with this. Get this in here. Well, okay. I'm going to use the same simple still life that we've used before. And I know it might take some time to draw it out in the cube, but if you just kind of basically get it laid out quickly in a rough sketch of it, then we can use that to practice our shading on. So I'm going to, as you can see, I've kind of drawn in, here's my cube. And the sphere. The cone, which is not quite tall enough. Interesting, I have these objects when I'm doing a live workshop. And wouldn't it be cool, Pam, if we did a follow-up, like quick little workshop at the studio sometime for those that have been in this? That'd be kind of fun.
Oh yeah, so they can like meet each other in person.
Yeah, I know we could do that again. Getting out with my plein air group yesterday was just wonderful. It's a great plein air group. There's actually about 200 or 400 people in it. Not all those people always come, but we get out and we just sketch together and sometimes have a little bit of a social time.
Oh, it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. But anybody that wants to come out, because then you're in a group of artists and some are amateurs and some are really accomplished, and you learn so much from other people. It's wonderful.
I think that's part of, you know, especially at the studio, especially when there's quite a few folks there.
Yes.
Even if we're doing different things, if we're sort of engaged with each other, we do learn from each other and do get that.
You do. Even if you're working on a different medium,
Right.
you can learn from other mediums and it can give you new ideas for something else. It's wonderful. All right, this light is basically, it's kind of coming from in front of the objects and off to this side. So the light's kind of coming in this direction. That's going to kind of be tricky to see. The height of it, I don't know. Pretty much straight out, it seems. How do I determine that? I kind of look at where the highlights are and figure that that's going to be it. There's no cast shadow from this cone onto this sphere. So it's enough in front of it that the shadow's going behind and not onto this other object. If the light were coming from behind this cone, then there'd be a bit of a cast shadow on the sphere from the cone and probably also onto that cube. So we're coming in kind of this way. I'm going to say the light's coming from here. So once you have your objects in, you can kind of, one of the best things to start doing, always think form. Remember, the sphere goes this way and around this way. So that's always curving. The cone is also curved. So it's not just a flat two-dimensional object, it's curved. And this is in space. So starting out with our core. So we want the highlight. We have an idea where that's going to be. Highlight the core. That's the darkest area on the object. The reflective light and the shadow. And then of course, between these two, you've got that blended light. So where's the core here? We can see on the picture, even though it's not a really clear picture, that it's darkest here. On the cube, it's darkest here. And on the sphere, it's darkest there. So we can start by laying in some of this dark. This is not a very flat pencil. Again, the darkest dark we're going to get with this, if I put this up against that black, and I'm pressing and I'm working this and I'm trying to cover everything, you can see that the black of a graphite, I don't know if you can see it very well on yours, but is actually down into, say, the 7. So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you know, it's going to be in this range. It's not going to get your blackest black, where your charcoal can. You can get that nice dark, dark, dark. Off to the side here, every time I get my fingers, I have a rag, and I always use the rag. When I'm doing pastel, because again, you get pastel on your hands, I always have the rag nearby. I try to keep myself and my area clean. Because in colors, one color can contaminate another color, and you want to keep your colors pure. That's about as dark as I'm going to get, I think, on that. So that's the core on my cube. Am I too far ahead of you folks? Are you guys okay with me moving right along here?
Yeah,
Yes,
good.
Jean, you good? All right, super. The core is going to be kind of here, following the curve of that sphere. Now notice I'm staying away. If this is the imagined edge of the sphere, I'm kind of staying away from that, because down here it's going to get a little reflected light. Up here is going to get some reflected light off that back wall. So I'm trying to find that central darkest area, kind of in there. Another thing that's distracting is these styrofoam balls always have a little edge. I bought these years ago. I've used the styrofoam balls as my white objects. I would try not to do that now. Did you know styrofoam, like plastic, takes hundreds of years to break down, and styrofoam takes like never. It like never breaks down. My daughter and I were shopping for my grandson's birthday yesterday, and anything styrofoam, we're just like, nope, not touching that, not at all. Sorry. That's an environmental statement there, I guess. But I hadn't realized how long it takes. Now the cone, again, we're going to kind of make it in a conical shape, the core, staying away from the edge, because that's going to get some reflection. It's going to reflect from the back wall there. This area is going to reflect a little bit off from that, the light that's coming and bouncing off that sphere back over to this way. So I'm kind of getting the general idea. And by placing these cores, I'm starting to shade the object. Easiest thing is the cube. We can tell the light's coming in low because this side of the cube, here, is brighter than the top of the cube. If the light were coming from above, the top would be the brightest. So a cube is the simplest form for shading. So here on the top side of this, I'm going to add a mid-tone. Say if we look at our chart here, a 3 or a 4, still on the light side. But some shading. And that's why the arrow is going to help me remember to be consistent. My instinct would be to make the top of the cube the brightest, the lightest. But as I look at this, I realize it's not. And by having the arrow of the direction that the light's coming in will help remind me of that. Same here, this highlight on the sphere is going to be in this area. And then from there out, between there and the core, we're going to get lighter and lighter, a lighter touch as we go along toward the highlight, and then a little heavier as we go back on the reflected areas. So I'm looking at my still life photo, but I'm also thinking ahead. I'm getting the general highlight, core, reflected light, and shadows in, and then I will do a little more defining of the finer points of that. Okay, I'm going to blend that in there. Graphite blends some, not a lot, but some. I'm trying to see what it looks like to you. Okay. And the same on the cone. We want to kind of, our highlight is going to be a little bit conical shape on this side, down to the reflected light areas. I know I'm going to be making some adjustments between this area, but I'm going to come back to that after. Where the core goes down near the cube. And of course, the edge of it is going to be a very, very light tone, very light tint around that highlight back there. And if I blend it like this, I can then come back with my eraser and pull out the highlight even cleaner. And that looks pretty natural. Now we want to work on the cast shadow. So the light's coming in. Not quite at that direction, is it? It's more like right here. Okay. And it hits the edge of this cube, and I can see it's going to do quite. So I'm imagining how it hits that edge, and the corner of that cube shadow is going to be there. The corner of this cube shadow is going to be in here somewhere. So that's this corner. So it's going to go down to that corner. And then this corner. This line here, shadow is this line here. Now, as we notice, no, I'll come back to this. I'm going to come back to how that shadow casts onto the sphere in a bit. Now the light comes and you can see that the shadow from the sphere is going to go off in the distance, but it's going to come from here. That's the edge of the table here. That's what I was drawing there. This is the edge of the table. And then after the edge of the table, it falls off and goes onto the wall behind. And that's going to take on a different shape. As it falls to the wall behind, this is going to spread out. Partly I know that by the geometry of the objects, but also by looking at it and studying it, I will know that. And then from the cone, it goes off. It's going to be cast at a distance and very diffused off on the wall behind. Kind of poof that way. And it also is going to cast a little, no, that's that cast shadow. This one is from the sphere. So by understanding the forms and the way shading and light and shadow work, you can help, it will help you define your drawing and your shading so much better. I think that diffusion really goes down into that. And then you're comparing. Remember how we did relationships between objects where one object touches another? You can also do this comparison with your values. So comparing the value of this dark area to what's beside it, and what's the comparison between those two things? What about the value of this area of the sphere as compared to the top of the cube? They look about the same. There's a cute little trick you can do with this too. Just popped into my head. I will take a piece of paper like an index card or something. And you can do this with color when you're trying to find a shade. What do I want to say? When you're trying to find a value or a color and you're not quite sure, you can take a white card, cut a little notch out of it in the middle, and then you can hold it there and you can see in that little hole, and you can't see that very well on what I'm doing. Let me go down here. You can look at what that is out of context, and you can compare that to your value scale and say, oh, that's about a 5. Well, I think that's as dark as this part back here. So if you isolate that little section, you could say, oh yeah, that needs to be a little darker. So that's a fun little tool to use when you're trying to determine certain things. So that would be darker. And then,
Does it matter at all, the actual strokes you're using, the direction, how you're putting them down?
oh, that's a good question. No, with this object, with this pencil, I mean, I try to use the point of the pencil near the object usually. I'm trying to follow the shape around it, you know, like I'm coloring or something, but otherwise it's kind of random, and I like a variety. If you look at some illustrators, when they're doing hash mark shading, they'll vary the strokes, and you'll see this on older illustrations especially. And it's just kind of a way of doing it. So sometimes by making the strokes vary, it creates interesting marks on your drawing or painting.
You're doing it more for interest than for realism or anything like that.
Well, I start out with the realism. The realism trumps the strokes, but like, you mean this stroke as opposed to this stroke? No, not really. If I were doing this drawing, I would use charcoal, and I wouldn't have to worry so much about the strokes because it blends better than a pencil that has a point.
Yeah, okay, just curious.
Good question. No, that's a great question. All right, we also have the light coming here. It's hitting, of course, we know that this shadow of the corner of this box is hitting back here somewhere, but as it goes back, it also hits on that sphere because it's touching the sphere. It's right there, so you can see it, that shadow is, here it looks like there's a distance between here, the sphere and the box. But in reality, we see it's touching. So that shadow is going to start right at that corner, and it's going to basically follow the shape of that sphere. Even though it's from a box and it's a straight line shadow, in reality, once it hits that sphere, it has to follow the shape of the sphere. And then we continue to define these. It's supposed to be darker here. So I'm going to darken that. I'm going to allow it to diffuse slightly as it goes away from that cube. You can almost see that the shadow side of the cube, the core of that is blending in pretty much to the shadow that it's casting. So you almost cannot tell the difference of what's happening in here. But if your form was originally solid, it's going to work. What's going to happen is in the viewer's mind, it's going to complete that corner down in here of the cube. Our minds kind of automatically do that. Okay, this is lighter. Now I'm just kind of, I'm noticing that this is a little grayer. Again, this tool is frustrating me a bit. I'm going to lightly put some of this in, and then I'm going to try to blend it. My finger. My graphite sticks are. I have some, you can buy graphite in large finger-shaped sticks too. And that's great for laying in these large, soft areas of shading. clip's going to get in the way here. Now I'm just kind of refining by the juxtaposition. I notice that this edge here is a little darker than what's I have it. And bring that in a little bit. This corner of the top of the box is a little darker against the light of that. But even though it's the same shading, flat kind of here, against the white, it's going to seem a little darker. Against this, it's going to be a little lighter because this light is reflecting back here.
Carrie, then I just wanted to give you a time check. You get about 25 minutes left.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. Let's highlight. I'm kind of refining, picking that up a little bit with this eraser. This is too dramatic, so I want to blend that in a little more. It was too dramatic from the core to the reflected light area, I noticed. Good thing for doing that is step back every now and then if you can. I know most of you are sitting down, but that's why I like an easel too. I can step back and look at it more from a distance. Or you can take a photo on your phone and look at it that way. It makes it smaller. It simplifies the image so you can make any decisions you might need to make. The reason I noticed this is because I looked back at my computer and noticed there was a dramatic change there. And I want that to be a little more blended. And on the computer, it's not showing that I'm doing that. It looks more realistic in life. And I also noticed there's a little cast shadow under the edge of that box, but it's not even. Remember way back at the beginning when we did even and uneven lines? So it's not just, you can kind of press down, lighten up, press down a little bit, lighten up. Make an interesting line instead of just a, but it's actually a shadow. It's not really a line, it's a shadow under that box. To me, this is a little too dramatic right here. That's okay. So you can see, you can kind of keep working back and forth on some of these areas to make them work better. On my computer, I notice this area looks white. It's not white. It's about a 2 or a 3 on my drawing, that area that's right behind that cone. So just to let you know that. But as I look at it on the computer, it's much more dramatic. Here, I'm just kind of rolling the eraser just to kind of pick up some of that without really erasing it. Actually, it adds a little interest texture in the background as well. Yeah. Just blending this shadow down into this area because this is not dark, 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 the table. But it's darker than the highlighted areas of the cube and the other objects. Nice curve highlight there. This highlight, I want to make sure it's clean. So you can see as you continue to develop it, it comes out better. Okay. You all have this photo, I believe, yes? I wish I still had that sketch. I probably do somewhere of the dog that we did last week, because I was going to do this, but notice the light's coming from a different direction. You can almost tell in this sketch photo where the light's coming from, because the highlight's here. If you look at this closest object, you know, you think maybe it's coming from this direction, but because the shadow is that way, look, so you know that the light is going to be up over this way somewhere, up that way. And that's going to help you all the way through for the cast shadows. Cast shadow off the side of the lemon, this peach, the apple. Here's your core, your blended light, your highlight, and your cast shadow. Same here, it's not really clear, but there's your core. It's kind of highlighted on that very flat cone and on the edge of that candle. But there's also a little, right there, there's that curve. That's the lightest light, that's a white. So all of these lighter other spaces are going to be like a 2 because they're not quite as light, and you can't see it on your computer, I'm sure, but there's a highlight right there. So that's the 1. So all of these other light areas are basically a 2 on your value scale. Let me see, I did the dog the other day. I just want to do it quickly. This is distracting. This is not, I was just going to show you something. You can do the same concept, but you have to remember things in reality. If the light is coming, we can't tell where the light's coming from because when they took the photo, they cut out the shadow. But say the light's coming from up this way, right? And that would tell us where to cast the shadow for his feet, his chest would be down in here. Back here, it would just be that paw that's casting the shadow, but as you come forward, his chest and belly cast the shadow. Also shows you eyes, where the tail is, kind of where the ears are. His body. So you can throw in the shading on that. Whoops, I missed that. But what I wanted to point out is that he's fur, and fur is going to be tricky to shade because it's not just that, yes, there'd be a highlight here, a highlight maybe on his chest, a highlight here, but because the highlight here and the highlight there are on different colors, like his nose is very light, his forehead is dark, it would be like that color photo I just showed you, where the highlight on the blue is much darker than the highlight on the white object. I want to go see if I can go back to that. I think I closed that file already. So you want to do the drawing we did of the dog. Consider your lighting, and then the color, the tone of the fur is different from the value of the shading, and that becomes more complex, but that is a consideration that you would have. Does that make sense? Let me see if I can find that. Whoops, in the wrong spot. Any questions meanwhile? Because we've got maybe 10 minutes and I want to be sure that I have answered any questions.
Terry Lynn, I don't know if they've been drawing along with you or not, but I wonder if anyone wants to show what you've been working on in case you want Terry Lynn's input.
That would be great. Let me show this really quick. If you can go back to my screen.
Absolutely.
Thank you. What did I just do with it? All right. So there. What I'm referring to is the color of objects. So even in a dog's fur, part of him can have black fur or say a brownish orange fur or something like that. But notice here's the highlight on this blue. And that in our value scale is not as white as the highlight on these white objects. So that makes colored objects more complex to shade. Again, that's why it's a good reason to take a black and white photo. Going back to the dog, again, it's a complex object. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying on that, ladies? Yes. All right.
Terry Lynn,
Yes, ma'am.
is there a reason that the blue is darker than some of the other colors?
It's inherently a darker color. Is that the right word? It's darker. Why is it darker? It's because it's darker. But by taking, yeah, that's okay. Sorry.
Okay. Just,
Yeah, do you mean like compared to the orange? Why
yeah,
is-
or compared to the red, you
Uh-huh.
know?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Right.
they look equal in sort of, I don't know what you call tone.
They
or-
do, right? It's like it's like, well, this looks about as dark as this overall. But then when you switch to the black and white, you're like, wait a minute. And
Yeah.
when you're looking at a colored object and trying to determine its value,
Yeah.
that takes quite a bit of training, right? And the way we train ourselves, and you can train yourself, is by doing exercises like this. Get a photo of something. Our phones today are instant little photo studios. They're wonderful. There's so much I do on my phone. I mean, besides projecting right here, right for this class, I make all my YouTube videos on it. All I use is my phone, basically. It's fantastic. Do you remember, what was it, Back to the Future? And Doc Brown looks at it and he's got this video camera that's like this big. He's like, oh my God, you've got a whole TV studio right here in this camera, you know? Well, now we have it on these little apparatuses that we have, these, you know, the iPhones or whatever smartphone you have, it's there. So this instant tool that we have can take a photo and turn it to black and white. You just go into editing, you remove all the color on, it's usually under saturation, which is your color, and it becomes black and white, and you can examine those differences, which is a great point, Pamela. Like I was saying, in this, you might think, well, this and this area are pretty much the same. But when you switch that over to the black and white, look how much darker this area is than both of these.
So how does that affect the artist in painting with color?
Yes. Wow. You need to, even within a color, you have shades of that color and tints of that color.
Mm-hmm.
So if you, let me stop, share screen a moment. Pam, back to my easel for a moment. Thanks. Here, this is my sketching tools, of course.
Wow.
But you can see in my color boxes, like I have, whoops, that's not gonna work, sorry. It was laid out for drawing. I have divided, like here are my cool reds. These are my warmer reds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have warm yellows, a green, sorry, and cool greens. And within that, I have the darker ones. Sorry, just a moment. I have the shades back here, my hues, which are my pure colors. And then I have my tints up here, which are my light. So within one family of color, I can go to the shade of it, the central value of it, or to my tints.
Mm-hmm.
And that practice and talking to other artists and figuring out what's, you know, what they do. And why did my screen, oh, there it is. Yeah, thanks. that's why getting involved in groups, if you want to continue, it's great. There's so many wonderful groups out there. You can ask me if you want. Pam has some artists. The plein air groups are great because we go on location and you can just play, you can sketch, you can use whatever medium you want. Getting involved in classes, learning more. There's so many things, and I'm a resource for you now. Obviously, if you are trying something, you have a question, you saw what I did with those other sketches. You know, I can answer you individually if you want. Maybe draw some lines, give you some suggestions that way. So
Thank you.
that's a great, yeah. Does that make sense? I want to make sense and say, am I explaining this clearly? That's my point. Did that make sense with the colors, how you decide with colors? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if you use, because blues are darker, if you use them differently in position on the paper, or it's, I probably can't articulate the question, so it's okay. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. But yeah,
Let me go.
I understood, and it was really great to see that range.
Right. So blue. So within the blue, I mean, you've got the drawing down because now you know how to do nice solid forms. Then say you're working on this and you've compared it. It's not, that is not quite as dark as the black.
Mhm.
So say the black is, you see even the black, within the black there, this is like an 8 or a 9 in the value tone, the value scale, where back here is probably a 10. And up here looks like about a 10, maybe an 8 or 9 here. In the middle here, this is, because this lightest is never going to go up to a 1 because it's on the blue. And you can see that again. You can almost compare this highlight here to the white on this side. So that will help you determine which blue you're going to use.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh,
So did anyone want to, has anyone worked on anything?
yeah.
No, Terry Lynn? And the
Yeah,
rest
can
of-
I take a quick glance at it?
I don't know if they were just paying attention. Okay.
I mean, we
Jean's-
did things very quickly today. Oh, Jean, that's very nice. Very good. Yes. Nice. And I like the cast shadow on the sphere. Looks wonderful. You've got a good variety of tone. And it defines the shape, even without, see, the outlines are not really showing, which is great because there's real no outline. If you can do it with shading instead of with the lines, kudos to you. It's just going to be that much more advanced and professional. Definitely. Pamela, Donna, now again.
Yeah, I think maybe they were watching you more so than doing it with you. Yeah, Donna's nodding her head. So is Pam. Yeah. So but
Right, because it is quite a bit. And I
even after this is over, as Terry Lynn was saying, if you want to load something up to Padlet, you know, and Terry Lynn can just make sure that, I guess Terry Lynn knows that you've done that so that she can take a peek at it.
yeah, just shoot me a quick email or something. Am I still on? I was playing with my audio.
You
So
are
good.
you're
Okay.
yes.
Just do let me know that you've put something up there. The other Jean the other day, she emailed me. She said, I put something up on Padlet. Can you look at it? I'll get notification in Padlet, but I have so many other things going on. I'm also on other people's Padlets, other teachers, because I facilitate their workshops with the audio visual and stuff. Oh God. Ah! Okay, I'm leaving the group here. Sorry.
That's crazy.
I know. It's like, oh no.
Uh-oh. Hold on, folks. We're having technical difficulties.
There, now it's done. Sorry. Yeah, so just give me a heads up that you sent me something and I can check it out. Or just email me, a picture of your drawing and your question, whatever you prefer to do.
And does anyone else have any other feedback for if we offer this again at some point? What you would like to see, what you really appreciated seeing, anything that would be helpful for us to know.
I
Yeah, a
think
little
just
mild.
just if it's a beginner class again, to just keep going real slow. It's okay. Just keep going slow.
Did I go too fast?
Well, you know,
It
I'm
was
just
quick.
I'm a very, very beginner. So when we're drawing shapes and things, I probably could have used a little bit more time, but it was good. And I didn't practice very much on my own, which is on me.
Did having the video, I don't know, did you guys use the video as a resource after class, those of you who are here?
Right. And that's one thing. I do go a little quicker. I'm sorry, Jean, with this, because I realize you'll have the video that you can review.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a good amount of information in basically 4 weeks is a very short amount of time.
It is. Yeah. I'm sure this is a whole semester class.
Yes. Yeah. Usually 10 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
Jean, you had?
No, I was just saying, I don't know what I was saying, but it wasn't.
I think you said you used the video a little bit.
Oh, a little bit. Yeah, that's what I
A
was.
little bit. Okay.
Pam, did you have a question? Looked like you were about to say.
No, we were in the feedback stage, right? So for me, the video was just so helpful because it's hard for me to listen and watch and draw all
And
at the
draw. Yeah.
time.
All at the same time.
It's
Yes.
just like my
Yes.
brain can't do that. So with the video, I can pause it, you know, and then I can try it, and then I can go back to the video, and then I can try it again. So there's such value to it. I'm going to be really sorry when these Zoom classes are not available anymore, because I just feel like it's such a valuable learning tool to be able to go back again and again.
That's a wonderful point. And that's, as I was teaching today, I did have in the back of my mind trying to make this very clear step by step. So as anyone goes and watches the video, it would be clearer. And I know, Donna, I was going a little quickly, but also with that concept in mind, if we were in person and there was no video, I would treat it differently.
Yeah,
Pamela,
makes
to
sense.
your point, there's a group of, well, pastel teachers anyway, that we've been meeting since COVID started. And as I said, what equipment are you using? How are you doing it? And some people's studios are set up so there's static studios. I mean, I have to be able to travel with mine. But we talk about what's our next step now that we're going back to live workshops. And a number of students and teachers are saying there's a value to this Zoom workshops with recordings that they can go back to, and the fact that you can reach people who are not in your immediate area. As I said, I've had people from France and California in my workshops all over. So we're trying to figure out some sort of hybrid situation.
Yeah.
With this thing, I mean, there are three of you guys, well, not you guys, but 3 people who have signed up and paid for the class that are taking it remotely, basically, because for various reasons, so we couldn't have had them. And I also had feedback from another person who said that there's less, they don't feel they're having to compete or keep up with anybody else in the class because you can't see each other's work. So that's certainly valuable. I could see these continuing for more of the fine arts stuff like this. I don't, and we may end up having some more for fine art stuff. It's the only way for Purple Crayon, for whatever reason, it seems that we've been able to sell fine arts workshops. But for our other types of workshops, I think half of the other thing is people want to be there in person.
Right. And I was going to say that that's part of the, I mean, it's not the same as being in person, but even if I can't be in front of a camera, you know, because like tomorrow I have painters coming. So I've had to like move all my stuff. So, but being able to hear it and being able to see what other people are doing, it feels like being in the room. So I just really have enjoyed it.
Right.
I was wondering if there, and this is going totally against what she just said, but if there could be an in-person pastel workshop at Purple Crayon.
Look at Terry. You know, interestingly, Donna, our very, very first workshop that we attempted to run when we first opened Purple Crayon was a pastel
Yeah,
class intro,
Yeah.
because our first few members, our first teacher, that's what it wasn't Terry Lynn, it's another person who's back in the studio, and we got one person I think to sign up.
oh,
But that was when we first opened up. You
Yeah.
know, we had very few people who knew who we were. So, you know, it's possible. Again, my audience, most of the people who are interested in Purple Crayon stuff are not interested in the fine art stuff. They're not interested in coming to a workshop in person multiple times to learn a technique.
okay,
I'm not saying we wouldn't do it.
sure.
I'm just not confident we'd have enough people there to make it, you know, like worth Terry Lynn's time.
Well, maybe you could put it out to your email list and just see if there's any interest.
Yeah,
She has, I think, a couple times.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Pam, do you mind if I put in a tiny plug?
Please plug away.
The art museum
Oh,
offers
Yes, good
classes.
point.
pastel classes? Okay.
I've
right.
done 2 for them, and they're looking for a proposal for October.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Terry Lynn, do you keep your own distribution list of people who have taken your workshops and stuff? Because you should if you don't.
I keep them. I haven't put them into my email yet. I've been doing so much work for the gallery and the other pastel society. I'm getting out of the gallery because I do need to be doing that for my own.
Yeah, because
And I do have videos on YouTube as well, but they're kind of demonstrative ones. They're not really workshop ones. And I've considered a Patreon page, but I don't know. That's kind of odd to me,
Well,
but who knows?
I'm just thinking, even just from the Purple Crayon folks who have taken workshops from you, plus you've
Yeah.
had other people from the art, other places you taught, they need to know, just like Donna's saying, where, when, and where you're teaching
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
classes.
Okay.
Yeah. They're gonna be your low hanging fruit. Any other questions? It's about right on noon. Thank you for that, Donna. And like
I want to
said,
say it's been wonderful working with you ladies that I have, and it's been enjoyable. It's funny, every time before I start teaching or doing a demo, I get this like, it's not really nervousness, but there's like, oh my God, you know, and then I get into the group and I'm teaching and I'm seeing you folks, like seeing your faces. It's so nice.
yeah.
Yeah,
I-
thank you for doing this between traveling back and forth to Maine also.
Oh yeah. Well, I've kind of arranged to do that, and Pam knows. I mean, we've worked this out that we can do it this way. So
Yeah, it worked. Worked well.
thanks.
do it.
From your point of view,
Yeah.
good.
Oh,
to
yeah.
teach classes. I feel lucky we get Terry Lynn at all. So
Yes.
It's a joy working with
Definitely.
Pam too. She's great.
If you decide to do a one-day follow-up thing, I would be interested in that.
Oh.
Yeah,
That might maybe like a little open house, Pam, where we can bring in people that have been in the class and other people can kind of go, oh, this is what this is
It'll be
about.
fun.
Maybe.
Mhm.
Just a thought. I know. We're always brainstorming.
absolutely. All right, ladies. Well, if there is nothing else that you have to ask or say, I personally will thank you very much for taking the class and for being here for 4 weeks. It's a big commitment. I know not 10 weeks, but it's a big commitment still, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So
In the
appreciate-
summer, especially too.
and in
Yeah.
the summer, and always being on time and being very present. You were really here when you were here.
And I have some follow-up things that I'll be mailing to Pam so she can send them out to you. Some emailing.
Thank you
Okay,
so
thank
much.
you.
Thank
you.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Have a wonderful summer, rest of your summer, and hope we'll see all of you in person or online again soon.
For sure. Thank you,
Okay.
Pam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.